List of unfriendly countries and territories according to Russia. Of course, in North America, you have the 2 NATO countries, USA and Canada. Some of our big allies in East Asia like Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. Unsurprisingly, there's Australia and New Zealand down this way. And then finally, pretty much all of Europe. Even neutral Switzerland themselves is considered unfriendly. Some of the places that aren't included are pretty interesting. Bosnia, Serbia, Moldova, and I'm really surprised Turkey isn't included as well. I know that's kind of like a love-hate relationship. That's especially weird considering they're also in NATO. This is like the only country in NATO that isn't considered unfriendly. And then there's countries like Ireland that aren't even in NATO but still included on the list. No, Georgia? Oh, I love this game. Time to figure out what country of origin this history textbook came from, based off looking at just what other countries were mentioned in it. Gotta see if I can figure it out. Okay, so immediately, since Canada wasn't even mentioned once, I'm going to assume it wasn't a British or an American history book, since a lot of these Spanish-speaking parts of America weren't included. I'm guessing it's not Spain either. I wonder if it could be Portugal, since Brazil was included, also Morocco. Also keep in mind that Portugal did have some colonies out here in Africa for a little bit. Can't be France because this wasn't mentioned at all. Someone that didn't have anything to do with Southeast Asia or Vietnam. Now this is weird. Australia was included but not New Zealand. Also, like 50% of European countries aren't even talked about. Mostly in Eastern Europe. Not even Belgium once. Not even Sweden once either. I love that that's repeated. Last time we played this game, it was a Dutch history book. I guess a lot of countries just don't care about Sweden at all. This is such a hard game because it can pretty much be any of the orange countries. I wonder if this could be Russia. Look, every former Soviet territory was talked about at least once. But you would think they would at least mention Mongolia. Can this even be a country from the Eastern Hemisphere? If not even Mongolia, the great Mongolian Empire wasn't talked about. Like, that whole thing had such a big impact on the entire old world. I really wish they told us what type of history we're looking at. Is it ancient? Is it medieval? It's relatively modern, I'm going to assume, because a lot of the new world is included. I don't know why, I'm just feeling Portugal. I'm gonna say Portugal. I cannot believe I got that. That's kind of a guess. I almost just gave up, but that was just like my best estimate. And then since Portugal was neutral during WW2, it explains why a lot of places weren't talked about, like Poland. And Portugal's one of the only countries that didn't have to face a Mongolian empire. Here's a time lapse showing the first 8 days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Wow, with key reported airstrikes, key reported ground and naval attacks. You can see the shifting back and forth of Russian occupied lands, or where Russian military presence is located at. Boom, by March 3rd, this was like the last update. Seems like they're just putting all their focus on Kyiv now. Still watching Vologda mapping. Here's day 12 and all the updates. It's just so difficult to figure out exactly what is going on and all the different changes. Flight JL43 that goes from Tokyo to London no longer flies over Russia and actually goes over Alaska. This is the normal path in a straight line, but instead they're doing this little curve. I'd love to know how much extra fuel this now consumes. I mean, this is a flat map. I mean, if you were looking at it on a globe, it might not be quite as bad. And I wonder how many hours this adds to the whole thing too. It adds a full 3 hours of flying time. So that is a considerable detour. The route actually looks even crazier when you have a perfectly flat map. That would be quite a long flight, needless to say. How much daylight are you gaining in the month of March in the lower 48 states? Almost 100 minutes over the span of 4 weeks get added to Washington, the northern part of Idaho, Montana, and even a part of Maine over here in the East Coast. And then every layer south, it decreases by about 10 minutes. This is beautiful. I had no idea it does this. Closer you are to the equator, obviously you're already getting a lot of sun as is, but the southern tip of Texas and Florida are adding just 40 minutes. That still seems like so much in 1 month. Like, I never even consider that. I'm gaining an extra 60 minutes of sunlight here in LA. I can definitely start to feel it. It's so nice. I don't want to complain about my seasonal depression whenever it like stays dark out, because I know other states have it way worse, but it sucks. I'm just gonna say it messes with me too. I don't want to say it's depression, but it's just seasonal sadness. Like, it's dark outside. It's only 4 o'clock. So I talked about the Texas exodus between 2016 and 2019, and I really wanted to see the Californian version of this. Here it is as of the last few years, and it is definitely going to be probably more drastic than Texas. You can see a lot of the population is moving to Texas, some to Florida, but mostly to neighboring states like Nevada, Utah, Arizona, a lot to Washington. Did you see all the people going to the Pacific? I'm guessing these guys are going to Hawaii, or they're weebs moving to Japan. I don't know. Oh, you can also see some of them moving to Alaska, just barely off screen right there. Crazy to see how little of them are moving to the East Coast or New England, New York. According to this, the top places are Texas and Arizona, actually. Then maybe Washington is third. Here's an even more detailed version of that, showing exactly which county they're moving out of and which county they're moving into. So obviously, in terms of Nevada, everyone's moving to Vegas. I mean, there's Reno up here, but it's mostly Vegas. And it's Phoenix, Arizona. I'm sure Austin, Texas is what's going to be blowing up inside of Texas. It's pretty much all the major cities. So Seattle's getting a lot of them in Washington, and then neighboring counties, of course, to that city. This is absolutely beautiful. I love seeing this get broken down even more. There looks like there's a lot going to the East Coast, and specifically Boston, but I think it's actually just taking those dots a while to get all the way across the screen. Surprisingly, the counties that seem to be losing the most per capita are actually some of the inland places. And San Diego is the biggest Pacific county, it might look like. I'm surprised. You'd think people from like LA and San Francisco would be trying to get out. That is based off per capita though, percentage. So I was wrong. It looks like Austin isn't really blowing up. It's Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. And Chicago looks like it's also getting a considerable amount of California migrants. Can't believe any of these Californians are moving to some of the colder states. They are definitely not going to be prepared. Where Europeans lay claims to neighboring countries, or percentage of people who agree that there are parts of neighboring countries that really belong to us. Talk about a fun map. You can see that most of Eastern Europe tends to have more people that agree with that statement. Obviously, more than 50% of Russia's population agrees. Not even 50% of Ukraine though. I mean, didn't they have Crimea taken from them? It's fun to kind of think about what some of these people actually want depending on the country they're in. Like Greece, 60% say there's stuff that belongs to them that isn't in their current borders. I would assume this has something to do with Turkey, or I don't know, maybe up here. The largest on the map though is Hungary at 67. I mean, they did look something like this for a very large portion of their history, so I guess that's where it comes from. And then of course there's the thick Austrian-Hungary borders that lie underneath this. Just too bad the Austrians weren't included on this poll. Western Europe, on the other hand, is a lot more chill about this stuff. I mean, technically all these places at one point had a lot of colonies, whether it was in Africa or America or in Asia. They're just like, nah, it's not ours. Not even a quarter of Brits think there's more stuff they should have. Sweden is the most chill. Honestly, what could the 13% want? Are these just memers? They're trolling Denmark. They think they should own it. I mean, at one point, Sweden controlled Finland, some Baltic territory, even Norway, so there is argument, but I guess most of their population doesn't agree it's still theirs. Lithuania at one point was also pretty thick, but they're just pretty content. We saw earlier Russia's unfriendly countries list in 2022, but here's that same list 1 year ago. It was just the US and the Czech Republic. I think I remember that too. What was going on again? I just remember reading a Country Wall comic about it. And here's how global GDP voted on UN motion to condemn Russia. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of the world's GDP from North America and Europe, and they did vote to condemn Russia. But then there's places like China and India who hold a lot of power. They abstained from voting with the orange. In red, we have global GDP that decided against it, so obviously Russia voted against it, and they are about the only ones. They are the only ones if we're considering this stat. What's the difference between abstained and no votes? So there are a couple no votes. I think this part of Africa, a lot of northern South America. Remember, this isn't exactly showing us countries. This is just showing us GDP divided into what, 100 circles? I guess abstain is just a vote. They just voted not to vote. Confusing. The most common dream in every country. You would think, how the hell did they gather this data? But they used Google searches, and based off what people were researching in which areas, that's how they came up with this data. So for a lot of Western countries, Canada, America, a lot of Europe, it's teeth falling out. Australia and New Zealand also freaked out of that. I've definitely had one of those dreams before. What does that mean again? Personal loss. That's a common interpretation. In a lot of Eastern Europe, Africa, parts of Asia, it's a snake. I've had dreams about snakes too. There's something very primal about, you know, the fear of snakes, so that makes sense. Well, almost all of South America freaking out about those. You'd think that Australia would be worried too. I guess snakes are everywhere, that, you know, they just keep them like pets. Mexico's most common dream is ex-relationships? Yo, Mexico, you gotta get over that stuff, man. Move on. Don't be looking back. Same for France as well, weirdly. Oh, and Japan, I should have known. Falling into water is a common dream in South Korea. What could that mean? Again, these aren't nightmares. Technically, it's just dreams. So Saudi Arabia, Iraq, they dream of marriage, whereas Germany and Italy dreaming of pregnancy. I guess that could be a dream or a nightmare depending on the circumstances. Greece, what the hell? You dreaming of hats? What? Some countries are dreaming about the dead. Is that like zombies basically? Or I'm guessing you just see somebody. I don't think it has to do with zombies, but maybe that is included. That is like an umbrella underneath. It holds a lot of topics. Iceland dreams about snow. It's always snowing in Iceland. Why would you be dreaming about that too? This is such a fascinating map. I don't know how legit it is, but I still like it. Albania, I'm gonna need you to chill. Bhutan out here dreaming about rainbows. That's actually really wholesome, guys. And Ethiopia and shoes. Okay. Number of goats per country. I've literally never asked this before, but I'm still curious. Who has the most goats? In the 70s, it looks like it's other, so a lot of smaller countries have most of the goats, but I'm willing to bet it's going to change. In the 1990s, India's number 2, China is 3, but it's going to be, oh, there it goes. China's ahead, and goats are on their way coming back in the other countries is what I mean. Oh, it's going back and forth. Pakistan has a lot of goats as well, but Nigeria just passed them up. No USA? We don't have any goats in the USA? I guess I haven't seen one in a while. Yeah, no, goat population has increased from under 500 million to over 1 billion in 2018. I don't know why I need to know this information, but I will forget it in probably like 5 minutes. Here's the most common word in Naver, which is a South Korean search engine. So when South Koreans go to Google certain European countries, this is also a word they tend to associate with that place. First of all, if you're from Spain, you might want to move to South Korea because they're big fans. Italy with just good food, and then Switzerland with their watches. Everyone loves Swiss watches. South Koreans don't like France, apparently. Chocolate in Belgium and skaters in the Dutch. Germany's just economy, which is probably good. I mean, there could have been way worse things there, Germany, trust me. The Queen and drunk pretty much nailed this region of the world too. Good job, South Korea. They must not know about Legos in Denmark, but dairy's good too. Interesting. I've never seen Latvia referred to as beauty before. Russia, macho. Doesn't get good when you get to this part, the Balkans. Lazy for Greece, poor. Alexander the Great, there you go. Ugly president. How is that number 1? The number 1 search term for Slovenia is Slovakia, not Czech. Prague. This is amazing. Maybe South Korea isn't actually the worst Korea. I think they might just be the best. Modern cable TV summarized, so when it comes to the Discovery Channel, they try to sell science, but they actually just show people in the jungle. Animal Planet tries to be about wild animals, but in reality, it's just cats. National Geographic trying to be about geography, but in actuality, it's just weird people. Oh, and finally, there's history, which we all know it's just aliens and pawn shop. It's like the worst of them all, but you know what? I'm not complaining. History Channel's downfall is probably why I even exist. There's a whole massive niche on YouTube that proves that people will watch history. People will watch geography. I mean, there's so many successful channels, yet they still make stuff about aliens. How beepers used to work, which they were even beyond my time, so I'm still kind of confused. Do y'all even know what beepers were? The code. Teenagers relay messages through their pagers by dialing numbers that in the digital world look. Oh, so this is basically text message the device. I remember my dad had a beeper. I didn't know what it was used for. 99 is good night. Read nighty night. Oh. 421 call me back. 911 report emergency. 411 I have a question. 33. Why don't we bring some of this stuff back? I'd rather write just 823 than thinking of you. I don't want to write out thinking of you. I'm not thinking of you that much. 637 always and forever. I hate you. Murder. Wait. Whoa. I ate 7. This is really crazy. How did I go my entire life not understanding how beepers worked? I feel like there's still some use today. Why don't they make a comeback? I'm just saying, it's a lot quicker than texting. And big thanks to my Patreon supporters. Young Waifu, Fat Nuts, Gerbil Boy, Why Am I Doing This, Sussy Melody, RyeThePie, Nora the Bald Free Smiley Philipp RF, Ortin 5610, Drew's Argentinian Alex Whitley is Mega Chad, Alfonso M6, aPhatNarwhal, AryanAfterHours, Barnsky W, Canadian Union, istoledrewspetdog, LuxembourgLover, Majestic Unicorn, Max Cooper, McBlorf, and Mimoshiki.